Who am I joined by? Let me tell you. Daniel Kaczynski is Conservative MP for Shrewsbury and is the part of the Brexit-backing European Research Group. His constituency voted to leave. Sarah Wollaston was a Conservative MP and is now part of the Independent Group. She wants another referendum. And Stephen Kinnock for Labour. Stephen was a Remainer but now supports what's called Common Market 2.0, a softer Brexit, if I'm allowed to put it like that. His constituency voted to leave by 60%, and Totnes, I should say, for Sarah Wollaston, voted to leave by 54%. So each of you represent constituencies that voted to leave, if we've got that correct. I hope we have. May I ask, by starting to say, your MP's in front of me. I've spoken to Ian Duncan Smith today, and he says he doesn't know how he's going to vote. But let me go around the table and see. Daniel, do you know how you're going to vote this evening?
Not yet.
You don't?
No, I'm waiting for the legal advice from the Attorney General, but also the ERG have put together a panel of 8 lawyers and barristers who are also members of Parliament, who are also going to be advising us.
Do you have a hunch?
My hunch is that I will vote against, but I don't know yet.
You don't know yet. Sarah Wollaston, do you know how you're going to vote?
I shall be voting against it. I don't think it's in the national interest, and it goes beyond the issues of just the backstop.
OK, and for you?
I'll be voting against it. The political declaration on the future relationship is just a leap of faith, and I don't think it's justifiable to spend £39 billion of taxpayers' money on a leap of faith.
Stephen Kinnock there for Labour. So that's what we can hear. Most people know how they're voting. Few still don't, but Daniel's got a hunch. Do you put any store by the legally binding changes, Sarah, that have been presented by the Prime Minister? Do you notice them?
Well, I think it's complicated. I mean, essentially, it's saying that we have our own interpretation that's being added to the withdrawal agreement, but not a line of the withdrawal agreement itself has been changed. We're just adding on some interpretations of it. So I don't see how it can be legally binding if it's still subject. Very many aspects of this are still subject to ECJ. So I don't know.
OK, so that's for you is where you stand on that. But is there not an argument at all, Sarah, for there to be the people voted for this? This is the deal that's on the table. This is the only deal we seem to be getting. Let's do it. Are you convinced in any way of that?
But the point is that how do we know that this is what people voted for? Very many people who voted to leave are deeply unhappy with this withdrawal agreement and future framework, and certainly the 48% aren't happy. So how can anyone represent this as the will of the people? My view is that we now know what Brexit looks like, warts and all, with all the uncertainties ahead within the future framework, and we should now be taking that back to the people to say, is this what you meant by Brexit, or would you rather stick with the deal we have? So we should have a confirmatory referendum on the known deal, the only negotiated deal that is on the table.
OK, well, that doesn't seem to be anywhere near happening at the moment, but that is your position. Fine. Stephen?
Well,
any store by what the Prime Minister said last night?
I think the 52-48 mandate was always an instruction to move house but stay in the same neighbourhood. That means leave the EU, leave the political institutions, leave the political project, but keep a close, frictionless and smooth trading relationship with 500 million consumers on our doorstep. And that's why we've been setting out Common Market 2.0.
And when you say we, who's we again?
So it's a cross-party group. The main people in it, I suppose, are myself and Nick Bowles, Lucy Powell and Rob Halfon. But we are representing a far broader consensus, what I would call, if you like, a silent majority of MPs across the House. I have always believed there is a cross-party consensus and majority there for a soft Brexit.
There does seem to be a cross-party consensus already in this room that nobody is putting any store, unless Daniel's going to change that, by what the Prime Minister has said last night. You know, this comes through as breaking news to the people of the UK, and it doesn't seem to change anything. And Daniel, your hunch, I know you're all waiting to see a bit more legal advice, is that you're not going to vote for the deal either.
Well, of course.
Did she just waste her time over the last few weeks?
Well, I didn't vote for Mrs May to be leader of the Conservative Party. I wanted somebody who actively campaigned for Brexit at the time of the referendum, somebody who believed in Brexit. And I disagree with Sarah. I think the British people knew exactly what they were doing when they voted to pull out of the European Union. So, of course, we want to deliver what they voted for, but we just need to ensure and have confidence in the legal advice that we are given today that in the event that the backstop is implemented, we are not somehow going to put the integrity of the United Kingdom at risk because the backstop is somehow impeding that normal constitutional framework that the United Kingdom exists in.
You mentioned legal advice there. Let me just bring Chris Morris, who's joined us from Reality Check. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
What do we know? What are you here to tell us about this?
So we have the legal advice here from the Attorney General. I've literally just been reading through it now. It's 3 pages long, and it obviously goes through the documents which were released last night, and in his opinion they do provide a substantive and binding reinforcement, he says, of the legal rights available to the United Kingdom if the EU were to fail in its duty to exhibit good faith. But the kicker right at the end, he says the legal risk remains unchanged, in his words, that the United Kingdom would have no internationally lawful means of exiting the protocol's arrangement, in other words, getting out of the backstop save by agreement. In other words, he's gone through it all. He said this is further, as I'm sure you've been saying all morning, it's further reassurance, it's further clarification, it's another layer of legal assurance. But in the end, he is saying the legal risk remains that the UK has no way out.
So he hasn't actually been able to go as far as Theresa May probably hoped. He has to be impartial. We should say that as the Attorney General.
It's legal advice to the government, and I'm sure that they would have hoped that he could have gone further. But if you look at what the documents said last night, and they don't go much further than what we thought the EU would be able to offer, which was additional reassurance, but clearly no legal change to the text of the withdrawal agreement, no change to the text of the backstop, and nothing which contradicts or overrules anything which is in the legal text of the backstop itself.
Chris Morris, thank you very much for giving us that insight. I think that's important to hear. Let me come back to you then, Daniel, for the Conservatives. When you've now just heard that, I recognise you've not read it yourself yet, but 3-page document, the legal risk remains unchanged. You have to vote against this deal, don't you?
Well, I'm still waiting to hear what our panel of legal experts in the ERG says, but that advice that's just been read out is obviously very much part of the problem. If we vote for the deal as it is, the United Kingdom could perhaps be trapped in this sort of airlock without any form of exit.
Yes, which is a well-run argument, as in we've heard it a lot from members of the European Research Group. So without just rerunning that for a minute, because you have, in the sense of we know that is your problem, if you like, with it. Yeah. When you hear just there that the legal risk on the backstop remains unchanged, you can't vote for that, can you?
No, but there are, of course, people in my constituency and even the senior party members at Shrewsbury Conservatives who are urging me to vote for it just to get it over the finishing line. I think what will be critical is what our partners say, the DUP. They are at the coalface of this issue. They represent constituencies that will be most adversely potentially affected.
And what are they saying? Have you spoken to them this morning?
Well, we've been talking to them extensively, but they have as yet not come out either way. And I think the way they indicate that they are going to vote is going to convince a lot of Conservative MPs one way or the other.
Let me ask about Labour then, just to get a picture. I recognise, Stephen Kinnock, you're not always the best person to ask about the entire bit of Labour because You're often going against your own leader. But do you expect, I did have in this seat a few weeks ago Lisa Nandy, who said to me it could be as many as 60 Labour MPs from Leave constituencies who will vote with the government if there are these changes made. Of course, I don't know if the changes have gone far enough for them, but do you expect there to be a substantial number of Labour MPs to vote for the deal?
I don't really. I think that the backstop is not the big issue for the Labour Party, and never really has been, because we want a single market alignment and a form of customs union. Well, if we were to do that, that would supersede the backstop, but it's very much in line with what the backstop is trying to do, which is deliver frictionless trade across the Irish border, and let's remember, protect peace, protect the Good Friday Agreement, one of the greatest achievements of a Labour government. So the idea that Labour MPs would be obsessing about the backstop in a way that the Conservatives are, I think is not correct. Where I think our big problem is that this political declaration on the future relationship is utterly utterly meaningless. It is full of platitudes. We have no idea where we will be then in December 2020. Let's not give away our negotiating hand that we have now whilst we're still to go into a transition period which is completely open-ended. Let's give the political declaration real meaning, real teeth. That means committing to the European economic... Well, it means getting a short extension, but in that short extended period, we can commit to a political declaration which puts us into the European Economic Area, a form of customs union, keeps single market alignment, shared institutions, and actually gives us certainty about where we're going to land at the end of the transition period in December.
And again, a bit like I just said to Daniel, we've had you on the programme a lot. You do a lot on the airwaves. We're very familiar with almost where you want to go with this. But I suppose, and I'll ask Sarah, this is kind of the route to get to where you want to go is quite difficult to try and explain and imagine at the moment. But is there nothing, when I was thinking about this late last night and early this morning in that cool way that I live, when I was thinking about this, and I really do need to get alive. I do feel like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day at the moment, but turn on the radio in the morning. But is there not, in all seriousness, a bit of nervousness about voting against this from your perspective, which is that, okay, yes, you've got your constituents who wanted to leave. Yes, you've got to have your own conscience clear that you did the right thing. But there is an unknown, and that's what Theresa May, like her, loathe the deal, like the deal. That's what she's trying to say is, here is a deal, and this is what we've got. Are you not nervous about voting against that in any way?
Look, I think Brexit has to be a reset moment for our country, but it needs to be a reset moment for our politics. And that means building cross-party consensus. From the moment that Theresa May had that 2017 election result, she should have reached out. She should have realised that she needs to act in the national interest. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, our cross-party group went in to meet Jeremy Corbyn last week. We had a fantastic meeting with people like Oliver Letwin, not exactly a left-wing firebrand, having a very constructive conversation with Jeremy Corbyn. We hope that Labour will give us the whip to support Common Market 2.0. If we get the Labour whip,
that's not even on the table yet, though, is it? At the moment, the table that we're dealing with, there's the deal, and then there's a delay, and then there's the avoiding of no deal. We don't have your proposition there yet.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn made clear in that meeting last week that he is very interested in our proposal. It's putting flesh on the bones of Labour's position. The letter from Corbyn to May had 5 tests: single market alignment, shared institutions.
So when would that happen?
All we're doing is giving that clarity.
In the delay period?
Right, so we get the extension on Thursday. We negotiate during the extended period a rewriting of the political declaration on the future relationship. We sign that off before we leave, which will probably be in May or June, depending on how long the extension is.
That's your ideal roadmap.
Exactly.
Sarah Wollaston, now part of the independent group, your ideal roadmap to a second referendum, how does that work out? How do you get there?
Well, the Parliament votes down the Prime Minister's deal today. Yeah. Tomorrow it makes it again absolutely clear that no deal would be a catastrophe. That's the least support of all for no deal in Parliament. And then we move on to the next phase, which is...
so then there's an extension.
There's an extension. And the point is that if we cannot then agree to move forward with Common Market 2, as Stephen has suggested, and it's acknowledged that there is complete gridlock, at that point, I think that there would be a majority in Parliament to say, where can we go from here? Because Parliament absolutely doesn't want to fall off the cliff in 17 days' time. And therefore, you would have to take the only deal that has been negotiated back to the British people and say, do you want this or do you want to remain with the deal we have?
Some interesting text messages in. Let me just come to you before I read some of those, Daniel. Your roadmap then, let's say you do end up voting against it this evening. You do end up voting against the deal. You don't really get to go down the no deal option or leaving without a deal because of these other votes that the Prime Minister has put in place. So I'm wondering, how do you see it working out for your interests and the people you represent if the deal doesn't get through this evening and you also don't vote it?
Well, of course, it's a big risk for people like me to vote against the deal because, of course, then...
some of these things could start happening.
These things, there are many, as we know, there are many, the vast majority of parliamentarians in the House of Commons voted Remain. And we could lose complete control of the whole process with an extension of Article 50 and all the other things, and then Pandora's box could be opened. I see the risk. The risk is really, really there.
Are you nervous about it?
Very extraordinarily nervous about it, and nervous for what will happen to the cohesion of our society as a country if the wishes of 17.4 million people are overturned. But I am not going to support something which I cannot have to complete confidence in from a legal perspective.
And while people can respect that and understand that on a logical level, they may just think, and it's exactly what Ian Duncan Smith just said, it's a political calculation as well, exactly because of this risk to which you've just described, that how will you be able to live with it if you didn't just go for the deal that was on the table if you don't then get Brexit at all, or Brexit in a way that you think means Brexit?
Well, it's interesting. The last time we had the vote on this deal,
yes,
the withdrawal agreement, the Prime Minister, Mr. Lidington, said, take it or leave it. This is as good as it gets. We're not going to get anything else. This is it. Now, yesterday, he says, and the Prime Minister said, we've gone back to Brussels and we've secured these extra legally binding advantages to the treaty. And they're saying the Prime Minister said the treaty has been improved. Well, we have fulfilled our role as a parliament, which is to hold the executive to account, send them back to Brussels and say, this isn't good enough for
Okay,
us.
but there's apparently no third chance. And actually, if you do hear what Geoffrey Cox has just said, if you're only just joining us, the killer line in his advice, which he's going to be taking to the floor of the Commons at 12:30, you'll hear it here on 5 Live, is the legal risk remains unchanged. About the backstop. So you haven't actually achieved what you even wanted. I spoke to some of the people in the ERG yesterday. I spoke to Mark Francois, who said it's not going to be what we want. So you haven't really achieved what even you wanted.
Well, I think everybody will have to be... Everybody in this room and in Parliament will have to be assessed by their electorate as to how they vote. I will be voting tomorrow in a very different way to my colleagues.
You mean if there is the vote tomorrow?
If there is the vote tomorrow, I will be voting for what I perceive to be the logical outcome of this whole process, which is to vote for us to pull out...
Without a deal.
On the managed no-deal basis. But that is going to be opposed by the vast majority of parliamentarians.
So you know you'll lose the vote tomorrow and you don't know how the vote will go this evening. I mean, that's kind of where we are at the moment, if there is a vote tomorrow and it goes against the Prime Minister this evening. I just have to say a couple of messages here. A reset moment for politics. Stephen Kinnock says, yes, that's called betrayal. I mean, that's quite a strong message that's just come in off the back of what you said, Stephen. A message here also saying, how can you fairly be interviewing 3 people at once who are all not going to vote for the deal today? Well, hang on, Daniel doesn't know for sure yet. You have not yet talked to someone who will, and it's important that they do. Interesting, just to reply, this is to Emma, who's texted in, good name. The Cabinet won't come talk to us today. We have asked, and I presume they are going to vote for this deal. And I don't think it's striking, Emma, that in all the calls that we've made, we haven't actually got anyone to come on the air who said they definitely will vote for it, but just make of that what you will. I carry on with her message. The country is being suffocated by our MPs now. We need to move on. People will never all agree. We need to make compromises. By heavens, we Remainers have. We accept that we have to leave for democracy, and we have accepted that with a terribly heavy heart. Please can we be freed from this painful limbo? And the Labour Party, which I used to support, do not get me started. I'm afraid I'll be turning Radio 5 off soon because for the duration, it's just too upsetting. Okay, Emma, I don't know if you can hear my reply, but don't go. Stay. We'll ask these questions. I will try and speak to someone who's definitely going to vote for it. But as I say, it's quite a challenge, which is interesting in itself. Just though, to her point, if I could put this to you, Sarah, first, and then you, Stephen, people want out of the limbo.
Yeah,
if they voted Remain.
This is the thing. People say to me, vote for it because then we can just move on. All I'd say is that the trouble with the future framework is it means that we're not going to move on. That's just the start of this. It's little more than a wish list, an extended wish list. And over the next 2 and probably even more than that years, we'll still be talking about Brexit. So I'm afraid anyone who thinks that we should vote
You're not doing
for
much
this
for my
just
listener
to
numbers
move in.
there, are you?
You know, but I mean, I tell you,
No,
we
go on.
are in Brexternity here if we vote for this deal.
Oh, I've not heard that word.
Yes, because it is just going to go on and on and on.
But aren't you part of that issue to an extent?
No, but the point is, I'm saying now that we know what this all looks like, warts and all, and it wasn't what people thought they were going to get, the sunlit uplands promised to them during the referendum campaign, now we know what we're dealing with. For goodness sake, ask people, is this what you meant by Brexit? Or would it, the best way to get rid of this and for us to stop talking about all this is to give people the opportunity to cancel the whole thing
but then
and
we'll just
stick
start
with the deal we have?
again, won't we?
Because people could just say, do you know what, this isn't what we thought it was going to be.
Because you think if there was another, I mean, we're not there yet, but you think if there was another vote that it wouldn't go through.
Consent. You know, you have to be able to weigh up the risks and benefits of what we've actually got on the table, and that's something people never got the opportunity to do in the referendum campaign.
Let me allow Stephen that response. Someone saying betrayal. I mean, what would you say to that? It's a very strong word, but it's getting used more and more.
I think just on the point of the referendum, I think the idea that if we had another referendum and Remain were to win, I don't, because there would simply be a call for the best out of three. So we'd end up in a never-ending, I'm afraid.
It's not.
On the point of this language of betrayal, I mean, it's time for British politics to rediscover the lost art of compromise. And the compromise here is to say 52-48. That means leaving the EU, leaving the political institutions, but keeping a strong, safe, stable economic relationship. That is, in essence, what I think people were voting for. Let's listen to the electorate. Let's interpret what they're saying, drop the language of betrayal, and start understanding what a compromise actually looks like.
Daniel, do you understand what a compromise looks like?
Yes, very much so. But I'd like to make the point that every time the people of any European country have had the temerity to take on Brussels, whether it's in Denmark, whether it's in France, or whether it's in Ireland, they've been told off. They've been said, you've made a mistake. Go back, vote again until you get it right. So, of course, we are at that stage again, and there are people who are saying we've made a mistake, we need to go back to the people.
But you've got a deal.
This time it's not going to happen because there's too much at stake.
But you are very wedded. My bigger question really off the back of what we just heard from Stephen is that compromise is on the table here, but it isn't just a compromise in the sense of going back to the people or anything that you've just described. It's a compromise deal. It might not be everything you like, but it allows you to Brexit.
Let's say we vote for
Why not vote for the deal?
Okay, let's compromise. Let's vote for the deal. Let's get it across the line. Let's hand over 39 billion. And then 3 years later down the line, we haven't secured a deal with the European Union. The talks have stalled, as they have stalled over the last 2.5 years. Northern Ireland is put in an invidious position with taking all these laws from the European Union, which the rest of the United Kingdom doesn't have to adhere to. There's a border poll, there's more tension, there are more problems. We would never be forgiven by the British people if we signed up to something which is like a Swiss cheese with so many faults in it, which then come to fruition. They would punish us severely because they know that we know that there are faults with this agreement. So compromise, yes, but not. We're not going to vote for something just merely to get it across the finishing line.
So I'm asking everyone who's coming on. Actually, no, just before I do ask this final question, I've got to ask Stephen while you're here. Stephen, did you go to this fun-sounding meeting that Tom Watson created last night? Labour's deputy leader. This is the Future Britain group. Is that?
I did. I was there. Yes.
Was it amazing?
It was an excellent meeting. Standing room only. Absolutely packed, and a real sense of we've got to come together to
create a party within the party.
No, I mean look. There's been Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell for the entire time on the backbenches were part of the campaign group,
Prosecco,
which is
pizza.
their tradition
what was on the menu?
in the party. There were far too many of us for any food to go around. I had a cup of cold coffee.
Sounds great. Yeah, God.
I kind of party.
Oh, the glamour.
Daniel wished he'd got in the vibe.
Has existed. It was. There were no canapes and no champagne.
Is Tom Watson genuinely, because you are far from this in the sense of the Jeremy Corbyn front bench, is he staging a coup inside the Labour Party at the moment?
No, I think he's saying it's a matter of deep regret that some of our most valued colleagues left the party. That's a wake-up moment for us. We have to be a pluralistic party that works best when it respects all of the different traditions. And he's met with Jeremy. Jeremy's given his full blessing to this group, by the way.
There was a bit of a coded quote I saw from Jeremy Corbyn's office on this, that as long as they toe the party line for now, it's kind of okay.
Look, I mean, we will develop policies which we hope will provide the British people.
You're always in a different group
proposal.
to Jeremy Corbyn, aren't you?
Well, I've never been a member of the campaign group.
Right, but I'm just saying,
to be Prime Minister.
You're always in a different group. You're very much in a different group. So, a quick question to you before we finish. the independent group, are you any closer to being a political party yet?
Well, we're going to move towards becoming a political party, but right now we recognise over the next few weeks that that's not where our focus and attention has to be. But yes, in the long term, we want to form a political party.
We'll get there. Is it going to take 9 months, do you think?
Well, the thing is, we want to be able to go out to the country as well and consult with people about the policies that we would like to have on the table. So, yes,
I get a few
it would be
texts who are
great.
for you, but
Yeah.
saying, can you hurry up,
Yes,
please?
no, we want to do that. We know that there's impatience for us to be a political party that people can actually get behind.
Stephen,
so we
are
want
you
to do
thinking
that.
of joining?
No, I'm not.
No. Have you been invited by Sarah?
The Labour Party is the greatest force for good in the history of British
Not
politics.
at the moment, it isn't.
And as far as because of
You
first
can't
past
even
the
support
post,
the leader.
Because of first past the post, I'm afraid this new party has absolutely zero chance of getting.
Those are nice warm words. And we did try and give you warm drinks, or maybe we just
Yes.
gave you cold coffee. Let me ask you
was very
then,
nice.
Daniel, from Conservatives, Daniel Kaczynski, is it going to go through tonight? The deal. Not are you going to vote for it, is it going to go through?
Well, I haven't brought my crystal ball with me, but
if you were bashing
I would suggest that it will probably lose by something between 50 and 60.
Stephen Kinnock.
Yeah, the deal will be defeated. I think the Cox advice makes that clear, and then it is time for us to rediscover the lost art of compromise.
Sarah Wollaston.
I think the deal will fail tonight. I think tomorrow the Commons will make it absolutely clear it rejects no deal, and that should be our key focus here, is making sure we don't crash out in a chaotic exit in 17 days' time.
Right, well, we've got them all on air, we've got them all on camera, and when it goes through later... No, I'm joking. So we're all on the record. That's our special bonus MPs panel for you this week. Don't say we're not giving you bang for your buck. Daniel Kaczynski, Sarah Wollaston, Stephen Kinnock, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Off to the chamber you